Okay, so with this lecture, we'll begin the design of an actual buck converter. This is a file which describes the design steps you will go through and we will go through to design an actual converter. So, first of all, here is the circuit that we will be designing. We have already discussed this circuit in the previous lecture, although the locations of the various components are at different places. Uh, and the design will do in 4 steps. So first of all, here are the specifications. We'll come to the specifications in just a couple of minutes. But with these specifications, we will do the design in 4 steps. So these are the 4 steps, and with each lecture you learn how to design the circuit for each step. So after this lecture is over, you will be able to do the design on your own for this step 1. After the next lecture, you will be able to design step 2 of the circuit and so on. Alright, so that is what is going to happen. So now let us start the discussion of the design. So this I am going to put up in the LMS folder, this file as a PDF. Alright, let us go through the design. Just give me a second. Alright, so this is a different version of the same picture. Actually, that version is a slightly more expanded version, which we'll discuss in the next class, next lecture. Today we'll discuss only the lower half of the circuit. Alright, so these are the specifications. Let's just read them quickly. So the load resistance is 10 ohms. We are given the input voltage is 12 volts. The output voltage we want to be able to vary between 2 and 9 volts, and as you recall, this can be varied by varying the duty cycle of the square wave. The switching frequency or the frequency of the square wave is given to us to be 100 kilohertz. The output voltage ripple must be a maximum of 10 millivolts. It cannot be higher than 10 millivolts. We are given this, and this is actually just to simplify the design. In real life buck converters, this will not be given, but I am giving this because it will ease the calculation of some components. And this is the specification is that the ripple in the inductor current, so the inductor current is going to vary with time, and the maximum ripple in the inductor current, which we will call as delta IL max, is given to us to be 0.4 times I out max, which is the output current. What is the output current? The output current is a current that flows in RL. Alright, so 0.4 of the maximum current that flows in RL is the inductor current ripple. There is an amplifier. So this is the amplifier, right? We've discussed this in the previous lecture. We are given that the gain of this amplifier must be 100. The power supplies available to us are plus minus 12 volts. Vin is 12 volts, power supplies are plus minus 12 volts. The power supplies are needed for this amplifier as well as for the comparator. So we'll be using actual chips here, and these chips need power supplies. The oscillator will also need power supplies. So those are available to us as plus minus 12 volts. Again, this is kind of a relaxation of real life buck converter specifications. Real life buck converters will have only one voltage given, 12 volts, and everything else will have to be derived from that 12 volts. To simplify, I am giving an additional plus minus 12 volts. And the reference voltage, we had discussed the reference voltage last time. This reference voltage is given to us. So we have another voltage source available of 1.2 volts. Again, this in a real life buck converters, this 1.2 volts will be generated from this 12 volts. But also these are additional circuits that we will not design in our buck converter design. So we'll begin this design, which is a step 1 of the design process, by determining the values of L and C. Before that, one thing, I out max, as I said, is V out divided by RL, and V out will vary from 2 to 9 volts. Therefore, I out max is nothing but 9 divided by 10 ohms. All right, so 0.9 amperes is I out max. So we have a number for delta IL max. All right, now in order to determine L and C, we'll first very quickly go through the equations for this RLC circuit. This is basically a revision of last semester. We had actually solved this or a very similar circuit last semester. So we'll write the equations again. So we write the KCL at this node, the output node, the sum of the algebraic sum of the currents through the inductor, capacitor, resistor is 0, and I've defined IL to be going into the node. So it's a minus IL plus IC plus IR is 0, and IC is C dVO dt, IR is VO over RL. So we get this. Then we eventually want an equation in IL. So we want to convert everything to VO to IL. So we say, well, in order to do that, we recognize that Vs minus VO, this node voltage is VO with respect to, if you assume this to be ground. So the inductor voltage is Vs minus VO. So that is equal to L dIL dt. And therefore we get an expression for VO as Vs minus L dIL dt. So we substitute that VO here, and we find dVO dt, and we'll substitute that here. So dVO dt is minus L d2IL dt squared. So we substitute dVO dt VO in this equation. We get this, we rearrange, and we get LCR d2IL dt squared plus L dIL dt plus RL IL equal to Vs. So this is our second order differential equation, which is non-homogeneous. The characteristic polynomial for this differential equation is LCRL s squared plus LS plus RL, and so we solve this quadratic and we find the roots. Now it turns out, and in anticipation of the fact that I know that the roots are going to be complex, so we'll assume that they are complex here, so that we write them as minus L plus minus square root J, and rather than writing B squared minus 4AC, we'll write 4AC minus B squared. So 4 LC RL squared minus L squared, we will take J out. J is of course square root of minus 1 divided by 2A, 2LC RL. And we rewrite this as this real part plus minus J times the imaginary part, and we define this as minus alpha plus minus j omega naught. With this definition, we can write IL, the solution of the second order differential equation, as e raised to minus alpha t plus some constants I1 and I2 cos omega naught t sin omega naught t plus the solution of the non-homogeneous part, which is Vs by RL. So that comes from here. So one non-homogeneous solution is simply Vs by RL in the DC steady state. So this is the form of the solution. We are now this is what I want to do. You recall from the last two lectures that we are going to switch this buck converter very rapidly between 0 and Vin at a frequency fSW, which is 1 over the time period. Now we are going to make this frequency much larger than omega naught, which is the frequency, the natural frequency of oscillation of the RLC circuit, because as we saw in the Bode plot, we want to make the switching frequency much higher than these so that the circuit acts as a low pass filter. So with that assumption that alpha, and also alpha capital T is much less than 1, omega naught capital T is much less than 1, so that for all t's in this equation, omega naught t and alpha t are much less than 1, so that we can approximate the exponential and the cosine and the sine. So with this we say e raised to minus alpha t is approximately, so e raised to minus x if for x very small is simply 1 minus x, and cos of x for x much less than 1 is simply 1, and sine of x is approximately x. So with all these, if we substitute in this equation, alright, for e raised to minus alpha t cos omega naught t sine omega naught t, so we'll get 1 minus alpha t, I1 cos omega t is 1 plus I2 into omega naught t, and we put it all together, we'll get a constant term, a term dependent on t and a term dependent on t squared, and another constant. We further approximate saying even this term, because it has a t squared and omega naught t is much less than 1, is going to be very small, so that we say that IL of t under this condition that the frequency of switching is very high can be written as a linear function of time. Now let us just convince ourselves that this actually does happen in our real circuit. So I have this SPICE file, which is the same SPICE file we had looked at last time, and the values we had used last time I've used here. So I'm just going to run it and look at the inductor current. So let us plot the inductor current IL2. Okay, this is I'm plotting only at the end of the I'm simulating this for 0.5 milliseconds, and this is the last 0.0001 millisecond of this simulation when the circuit has reached steady state. And what we see is that the inductor current does vary linearly with time. And so our assumption in the equation is correct. So in fact, that is all I want to conclude from this derivation of the differential equation. Now we are going to use this assumption or fact that for a very high switching frequency, the inductor current varies linearly with time. We'll use this to approximately find the value of L. So let us do that. So calculation of L and C we'll do now. Now before we start, one thing I want to mention is that real life inductors and capacitors both have a resistance. So until now we've said, well, inductor doesn't have any resistance, an ideal inductor doesn't consume any power, an ideal capacitor does not consume any power. But real life inductors, of course, they are made of a very long wire, and the wire has a certain resistance, and that resistance of course does consume a little bit of power. It turns out that even the capacitor has a small series resistance, which actually comes from the resistance of the capacitor plate. The metal plate with which the capacitor is made, that offers a series resistance. This is a little complicated electromagnetics, so we'll not go into it, but in real life designs, this capacitor resistance, which is called as an equivalent series resistance or just ESR, it plays an important role. For us, we are doing an elementary design, so we will ignore these resistances. Alright, so we'll assume the inductor and capacitor as ideal. I'm mentioning this because if you look at any document on buck converter design on the net, so from Texas Instruments or Analog Devices, these companies that make buck converters, they will include this ESR because they are designing real life converter chips. Alright, so we'll ignore it. I'm also mentioning here the duty cycle range, which comes from our specifications. Our specification was that Vin is 12 volts and Vout we want to be able to vary between 2 and 9 volts, and this variation will be achieved by varying the duty cycle, and so the range of duty cycle is 2 by 12 to 9 by 12, which is 1 by 6 to 3 by 4, which is 0.16 to 0.75. So these numbers we'll use in our calculation of L and C. Alright, so let us calculate L first and then C. So we say that, well, as we just saw, L, the inductor current IL, varies linearly with time and is going to go up and down between two. This value and this value are constant in steady state. And let us define this variation in the inductor current as delta IL. And the equation for the inductor, of course, is that V is equal to L dIL dt, where VL is the voltage across the inductor. And the voltage across the inductor is Vs minus Vo, as we just saw. So we say Vs minus Vo is equal to L. And because the inductor current is varying linearly with time, we can replace dIL dt by delta IL by delta t, where delta t is this time or this time, when the inductor current is either increasing or decreasing, one of them. Alright, so this is the equation we get. Then we say, well, Vs is given to us to be 12 volts, it is V in. Vo is duty cycle times V in for our circuit, because Vs is, well, if you assume Vs to be a square wave. Delta t is this, okay, so here I am doing this equation when the inductor current is rising, so that so the inductor current is rising, and so the square wave is on the high side. So the square wave goes to a high and a low. It is high for a time equal to the duty cycle times the time period, which is capital T times capital T. Alright, and so we get delta T equal to capital T d times capital T, which is this time. Capital T is a period, and that is equal to 1 over FSW. We are given 1 over FSW. So we put all of this together, we get an expression for L, which is Vs minus Vo into delta T, which is d times T, divided by delta IL. And Vo we can write as dV in. Alright, so this is an expression we get for L. Now let me say one more thing, and okay. Now we've been given that delta IL max, as I said a few minutes ago, is equal to 0.4 times I out max, and I out max is Vo max by RL, which is known. We just saw Vo max is so this was 0.9 amperes, right? So this is 0.9 times 0.4. So delta IL max is given to us to be 0.36 amperes. Alright, so this is one point of information. The other thing I want to tell you is that if looking at this equation, if we make L larger, it will automatically satisfy all the specifications. But one requirement for finding or determining the value of L is that we don't want to make it any larger than is necessary to satisfy the specifications, because a larger L means a larger size. Alright, inductances, as you know, increase in size when the value is larger. And for all electronic systems, well, most electronic systems, especially integrated circuit based electronic systems, you don't want to make the size larger if you can avoid it. So you want to make the size as small as possible. Therefore, you want to find a value of L that is just right to meet all the specifications, not make it any larger. Alright. So on a paper design or a simulation based design which we are doing, we can make L larger because for us it doesn't make a difference. But when you actually, if you were to actually put it in hardware, a larger L would occupy a larger size, which is not good. So one requirement for us is that make L only as large as is required. Alright, now here is the thing. Let's look at this equation again. So this is the equation for L. V in is given to us, 12. D will vary from 0.16 to 0.75. As D varies, the output voltage would vary from 2 to 9 volts. As the output voltage varies, delta IL will vary, right? Delta IL will vary as the duty cycle varies. Now, given the fact that D varies and delta L varies, and we are given the range of D, and we are given that the maximum delta IL must be 0.36 amperes, for what value of D will we get the value of, no, let me restate it, let me just read this. What value of L should we choose such that as D varies over its required range, which is this, and delta L varies with this D, the equation for L and the requirement for I delta L max are met. Alright, so we have to find a value of L such that with variation of D and variation of delta L, all possible variations are satisfied, and this condition is satisfied for that given value of L. Alright, with the additional requirement that you don't want to make it larger than what is required. Alright, I am leaving this as an exercise to you. You figure out what value of L you will choose. This is the beginning of your design process. So you do this and find the value of L that will meet this requirement. Alright, okay. Then let us calculate C. So again, like we assumed for L that the inductor current is linear with time, let us assume that the capacitor voltage varies linearly with time, so that we can write IC is of course C dV or dt, but let's assume that VO varies linearly with time, so we can approximate this as delta VO over delta T. Now what's going to happen in steady state is that, as we have seen in various simulations, delta V, the output voltage will have a small ripple in steady state, and that ripple is given to us 10 millivolts in the specifications. So now we are told that this delta VO can be 10 millivolts, and we need to find a value of C. But let us look at IC and delta T. Now it turns out that, of course, again the ripple will vary as the duty cycle varies. As the duty cycle varies from, what was the number? Duty cycle varies from 0.16 to 0.75. We calculated that, no? 0.16 to 0.75. Okay. So as the duty cycle varies from 0.16 to 0.75, the ripple will vary. Now we need to find the C for the maximum possible ripple, and we need to know the D at which it occurs, because D determines delta T. Turns out that the maximal ripple occurs at a D of 0.5. Now you convince yourselves that this happens. So you can do a bit of simulations to see that the maximum ripple occurs when the duty cycle is 0.5. Or you can even try to find ripple as a function of duty cycle through equations if you are so interested. That I am not expecting you to convince yourselves through equations, but through simulation at least you convince yourself. So we say that delta T then, which is equal to capital D times capital T, this one. So we'll say duty cycle is 0.5 when the ripple is maximum. So delta T is 0.5 times capital T, and delta VO is ripple. So we say C is equal to IC into delta T divided by ripple. Delta T is capital D capital T by ripple, and capital T, D is 0.5 from here, and capital T is 1 over FSW. So we get this equation, 0.5 IC FSW ripple. FSW is given to us 100 kilohertz, ripple is given to us 10 millivolts. What value do we choose for IC, or what is the, how do we find IC? So here are a few things. We realize that in steady state, once the switching thing reaches its steady state, the average current in the capacitor must be 0. Alright, so I'm making this statement, you convince yourself, you answer why. Why should the average current in the capacitor be 0 in steady state? Alright, so but I'll assume that it is 0. Also, we know that the current in the resistor, the load resistor, is practically a DC, right? The output voltage is going to be practically a DC because the ripple is very small as far as the resistance is concerned. So this current is not changing with time. Therefore, whatever change in current occurs in the inductor must be the negative of the change in the capacitor, or delta IC plus delta IL must be 0 as a function of time, because delta through delta I of the resistor is 0. Alright, so we get this. Now we say IC max. Okay, so we say the average current in the capacitor is 0. Therefore, IC max is equal to delta IL max by 2. How did I get this? Let me see if I have a plot of this. No, I don't have a plot of this. Yeah, IC, okay, IC max is equal, okay, delta, okay, I think you should, okay, I'm leaving this to you. You figure out why this is correct, alright? IC max is delta L max by 2. You figure this out from these two statements. It is kind of straightforward, and unfortunately I don't have a plot, so I'm not convincing you. Alright, delta L max is given to us as 0.4 times I out max. So this is 0.2 times V out max by RL. This we substitute. So where is that equation? So IC, we substitute IC max. And so that is IC max, and IC max is equal to 0.2 VO max by RL. Alright, so we get an equation for C where everything is known. VO max is 9 volts, FSW is 100 kilohertz, ripple is 10 millivolts, RL is 10 ohms. So we found a value of C. Alright. Now it actually turns out that the capacitor voltage does not vary linearly with time. It actually varies quadratically because it is the capacitor current that varies linearly with time. Why? From this, we saw that the inductor current varies linearly with time, and the change in inductor current is the same as the change in the capacitor current. Therefore, the capacitor current also varies linearly with time. And if the capacitor current varies linearly with time, then the voltage will vary quadratically, right? From this equation. If IC is linear, then VO is the integral of IC. So VO is actually a quadratic function of time. So this assumption is not quite correct, although we've assumed it. So again, I'm leaving it as an exercise to you to convince yourselves that if we do the calculations with all these other assumptions, but considering the fact that the voltage varies quadratically and not linearly, what you will find is that you will obtain another value of C, which is about 4 times smaller than what we've got here. So whatever this is, it will be divided, there will be a 4 in the denominator. You will find this for D equal to 0.5. Alright, so I'm leaving this again as an exercise. But for your design, I'm leaving it to you to decide whether you are going to use this value or a value 4 times smaller. It is your choice. Alright, if you use this also, it is quite fine. Again, the principle of course is the same as for inductors, capacitors in integrated circuits. Also, you want to make as small as possible, because the larger the capacitor, the larger the volume or area it occupies. Alright, so with this, you are ready to do step 1 of the 4-part design of the buck converter. So I would like you to try and do this before the next class, or at least definitely within the next 1 week or so. Alright, in the next lecture we'll discuss step 2 of the design, which is amplifier and comparator requirements.